Welcome to the Binge. No hype man, no polished bullshit, just a voice in whatever the hell happens to be interesting today. This is the place for deep dives, weird rabbit holes, half-finished thoughts, and the occasional moment where something ordinary suddenly gets a lot more fascinating than it has any right to be. One day it might be history. The next day it might be technology, psychology, conspiracy theories, bad decisions, or some other obscure thing you didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago. There's no script carved in stone here, just curiosity and the willingness to follow it wherever it goes. So if you're the kind of person who likes learning random things, questioning obvious ones, and occasionally saying, "Holy shit, I never knew that," you're in the right place. This is The Binge.
It's the Binge Podcast where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast. Come join us fast.
The day the sun took a swing at the earth. On the morning of September 1st, 1859, the sun was already high over England when Richard Carrington walked into his private observatory. Carrington wasn't famous, not really. He was the 19th century equivalent of a deeply committed science nerd, wealthy enough to build his own observatory, curious enough to spend endless mornings staring at the sun, which, if you think about it, is a strange hobby. Most people look at the sun long enough to check the weather. Carrington had dedicated years of his life to studying the strange dark freckles that sometimes appeared on its surface. Sunspots. Back then, nobody fully understood them. They were just odd blemishes drifting across the solar disk like slow-moving stains. Carrington's routine was simple. He projected an image of the sun through a telescope onto a screen so he wouldn't blind himself, then carefully sketched what he saw. Every spot, every shape, every little irregularity. Day after day, week after week, if astronomy had an equivalent of someone counting ants, Carrington was doing it. And then something happened that no human had ever recorded before. Late that morning, Carrington was tracing the outlines of a large cluster of sunspots when the light on the projection screen suddenly intensified. At first he thought something was wrong with the telescope. Then, two blinding patches of white light appeared on the sun's surface, bright enough to overpower the rest of the solar disk. Carrington later described them as two patches of intensely bright and white light. They lasted about 5 minutes. Then they faded. Carrington immediately knew he had seen something extraordinary. But even he couldn't have imagined what had just happened, because what he had witnessed was the beginning of the most powerful solar storm ever recorded, and the Earth was directly in the firing line. Normally, disturbances from the sun take 2 or 3 days to reach Earth. This one arrived in about 17 hours, which meant whatever had exploded off the sun's surface was moving incredibly fast, millions of miles per hour. The first signs something was wrong appeared in the skies. Late that night, people began stepping outside and noticing something strange. The northern lights, the aurora borealis, were appearing in places they had absolutely no business appearing. Normally, auroras were confined to regions near the poles, Alaska, Norway, northern Canada, but that night they appeared almost everywhere. People in Cuba saw them. People in Mexico saw them. Even parts of Central America reported glowing skies. In the Rocky Mountains, miners reportedly woke up in the middle of the night and started making breakfast because the sky had become so bright they thought dawn had arrived. Imagine stepping outside at midnight and seeing the sky glowing deep crimson. Not faintly, bright enough to read a newspaper, bright enough to cast shadows, bright enough to make people wonder if the world might actually be ending. Some newspapers described the sky as looking like a massive, distant fire. Others said it resembled a dome of blood-red light stretching across the horizon. People stared upward in silence, not understanding what they were witnessing. But something even stranger was happening down on the ground. In 1859, the most advanced communication systems on Earth was the telegraph. If you wanted to send a message across a continent, you tapped electrical signals down long metal wires that stretched across thousands of miles of poles. It was revolutionary. For the first time in history, information could travel faster than a horse. But that night, telegraph operators across the world started noticing something very wrong. Their machines began behaving strangely. Some operators reported sparks jumping from their equipment. Others described electric shocks when they touched the metal keys. Telegraph paper began catching fire in some stations. One operator said the sparks flying from his equipment looked like tiny bolts of lightning. Then things got even weirder. Several operators disconnected the batteries that powered their telegraphs, and the machines kept working anyway. Messages continued transmitting down the lines because the storm itself was generating electricity inside the wires. Imagine unplugging your computer and it just keeps running because the sky is pumping energy into the building. That's essentially what was happening. The planet's magnetic field was being shaken so violently that it was inducing electric currents in thousands of miles of telegraph wire. The Earth itself had briefly become part of a massive electrical circuit. What Carrington had seen that morning was something called a coronal mass ejection. It's exactly as dramatic as it sounds. Sometimes the sun's magnetic field becomes tangled and unstable. When the tension releases, it can launch billions of tons of plasma, superheated charged particles, into space. Think of it like a giant magnetic slingshot firing part of the sun outward at several million miles per hour. When that plasma cloud slammed into Earth's magnetic field, it compressed it like a cosmic fist punching an invisible shield. The energy involved was staggering. Scientists estimate the storm released energy equivalent to roughly 10 billion atomic bombs, which sounds ridiculous until you remember the sun is essentially a 4.6 billion-year-old nuclear explosion that never stopped. Most of the time, we're lucky. Those solar eruptions shoot off in random directions and miss Earth entirely. But in 1859, the sun basically lined up the shot perfectly, and Earth took the hit. Here's the wild part. Despite how dramatic it sounds, the Carrington event didn't cause catastrophic damage because in 1859 humanity had almost no electrical infrastructure. No satellites, no global power grids, no GPS, no internet. The only major technology vulnerable to electromagnetic disturbances was the telegraph network. And while it experienced chaos for a few days, society continued functioning normally. But if the exact same event happened today, oh, that's a different story. A very different story. Modern civilization runs on electricity the way the human body runs on oxygen. Power grids stretch across continents. Satellites orbit overhead managing communications, weather forecasting, banking transactions, navigation systems, and global logistics. All of it depends on stable electrical systems. A massive solar storm could induce powerful currents in power lines, potentially frying transformers that regulate electrical flow, and those transformers aren't easy to replace. Some weigh hundreds of tons and take months or years to manufacture. Satellites could be disabled. GPS systems could fail. Power grids could collapse across large regions. It wouldn't end civilization, but it could cause massive disruptions that last weeks or even months. In other words, one bad day on the sun could send modern society into a very uncomfortable technological timeout. The scariest part is that it's not hypothetical. In 2012, the sun launched another enormous coronal mass ejection, almost identical in strength to the 1859 event. Scientists later realized Earth narrowly avoided it. The plasma cloud passed through Earth's orbit about 9 days after Earth had already moved past that location. We missed it by less than 2 weeks. In cosmic terms, that's basically nothing. Had the timing been slightly different, the storm could have slammed directly into Earth, and we would have learned very quickly how dependent modern life is on fragile electrical systems. The strange thing about the universe is how peaceful it looks. Stars twinkle softly, the sun rises every morning like a dependable cosmic clock, space appears calm and silent. But the reality is that the universe is violently chaotic beneath the surface. Stars explode, galaxies collide, black holes tear apart entire solar systems, and sometimes our own star launches a massive magnetic tantrum that sends billions of tons of plasma screaming across space. Most of the time, Earth's magnetic field protects us, a massive invisible shield deflecting solar particles and cosmic radiation. But every once in a while, the sun throws a punch hard enough that we feel it. In 1859, that punch turned the sky blood red and electrified telegraph wires across the planet. If it happened today, it might remind humanity of something we tend to forget. For all our technology, all our satellites, all our global networks and digital empires, we're still living on a small rock orbiting a giant nuclear fireball. And occasionally, that fireball throws a hell of a tantrum. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe.
You know by now, got stories to tell, from the small to the grand, all under one spell. We talk about this, we laugh about that, from the strange to the bliss. Get ready to chat, it's the Binge Podcast, where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast. By now, got stories to tell, from the small to the grand, all under one spell. We talk about this, we laugh about that, from the strange to the bliss. Get ready to chat, it's the Binge Podcast, where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast. Where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast. You know by now, stories to tell, from the small to the grand, all under one spell. We talk about this, we laugh about that, from the strange to the bliss. Get ready to chat, it's the Binge Podcast, where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast.